I expect, as always, at Chamber of Commerce All candidate meetings that while we're here to debate, and we all want to do that in a respectful and neighborly manner, even though we may have different ideas and opinions on how we are governed and by whom. Tonight, it's your chance to become better informed so you can be satisfied with your choice in the voting booth. I thank you in advance for that respect for each other. Now it's time to introduce our moderator for the evening from Vancouver Island University, taking over for the balance of the night. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Carrie Chassels.
Thank you, Kim. And I join Kim in welcoming everybody here tonight and showing appreciation for being on Nanaimo territory to come together to hear our candidates this evening. Our candidates will each have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, at which point I will then read some questions that have been formulated by the Chamber of Commerce, and then I will proceed into some questions that have come from the audience and have been tabulated and pulled together for me by Merv Unger at the table in the front. The candidates will each have 45 seconds to respond to each of the questions, and they have each 4 chits, I believe, in order to indicate that they would like to make a rebuttal to a response that one of the candidates may make. And each of the candidates making a rebuttal will also have 45 seconds. And I did introduce myself to the candidates before we started this evening, and I let them know that I will be an equal opportunity with the hook and keep everybody on time, but they assured me that I won't need to do that. So we'll pay attention to the light and move on. So we'll begin to my left with Paris Gaudet to introduce herself.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Thank you so much. I'm Paris Gaudet, and I'm running to fight for the community that I love so much. Politics wasn't something that I planned to do. I was actually asked to run. And then I was thinking about my 15-year-old daughter and the opportunities that I could provide her by stepping up. As the only woman running a technology organization for the past 10 years in British Columbia, one thing that I've learned is that we need diversity. Diversity of ideas, perspectives, and experiences, whether that's in leadership or politics or business or nonprofits. We need people stepping up and leading. I grew up in a middle-class family. My dad worked at Harmac, and my mom chose to stay home. And they taught me the importance of spending within your means, saving for your future, and spending for today. And the BC Liberal values are very much my values. I am pro-business, but I also have a social service background. And I believe it's really important for us to be affordable, thoughtful, with the investments that we make to help those most in need. Nanaimo deserves a voice. And I hear every day that Nanaimo needs change. And I believe I am the right candidate at the right time in the right community. It's a growing community, it's a diverse community, and it needs a voice and a champion opportunities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paris. Next, Bill Walker.
Hi, thanks for coming. I've lived in Nanaimo for 25 years, self-employed mortgage broker, and I love Nanaimo, great community. I decided to run for the Libertarian Party, and I'd like to give you a little bit of philosophy here. We believe that our provincial and federal governments have completely lost control of their spending. We see enormous lost potential that results from expansive government monopolies. We don't need government to tell us what to do and how to live our lives. We need radical tax reform now. Our platform is built on the concept of choice. Freedom of choice is the basis of a free society. We believe in voluntary exchange and mutual consent. We believe in self-ownership. You own your own life. You have the right to protect your life, liberty, and property from others. No one has the right to steal it from you, including governments. Libertarianism is a cohesive social and political philosophy that recognizes the inherent value of each and every individual. Individual rights and freedoms are paramount. Securing the liberty of everyone is our primary political value. We don't believe that government has the solution to every problem. Government should not stand in the way of private citizens coming together and pooling their resources to solve problems in society. We believe in self-government. We don't need other people to plan our lives or approve our every action. We espouse the conservative values of small government, low taxes, fewer regulations on business, and strong communities with strong families. We believe that individuals that make voluntary, nonviolent choices should not face legal prosecution, but we don't believe in using government to push a moral agenda.
Thank you, Bill. Kathleen Harris.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. It's really exciting to be here. I'm really thrilled to have this opportunity to be here tonight and tell you more about who I am, why I'm here, and why the Green Party makes such a smart choice going into this election. I'm hoping some of you have had an opportunity to have a look at our platform. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to start by telling you a bit more about me. I lived in Nanaimo area for most of my life. My family is from here, including my grandmother was born on Gabriel Island. My father was the superintendent of Hub City Paving. My mother was a nurse at the Nanaimo Regional Hospital. And I spent 33 years as a nurse working with people and learning from them what is most important to them. I've worked in post-secondary, teaching many disciplines of healthcare with students for the last 12 years in a few different colleges and universities. Through that time, I focused most of my learning on what's called the social determinants of health, which really tells us about how things like our economies, our healthcare system influence chronic illness, mental health, and what I'm seeing is that our obsession with what we call the economy, which has come to mean people working harder and longer and really just having to run on that gerbil wheel all that much harder, is taking away from their quality time with their families, with their children, and the net result of all the positive gains and all the harms within a society are evident in its most vulnerable people. All we have to do is look around us and look at the state of youth mental health, our fentanyl crisis, our housing crisis, our
Thank you,
highest
Kathleen.
poverty rate in the country, and you know what I mean.
Thank you. Leonard Krog.
Good evening, everyone. I firstly want to recognize, likewise, we're on the traditional territory of the Tematic First Nations, who welcomed the first colonists here over 160 years ago. I want to thank VIREB, I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on tonight, and mostly I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. We live in a democracy, and it is a wonderful thing, and as we welcome Syrians into our community who have not enjoyed the benefit of democracy, we should cherish the privilege we have, each and every one of us, being able to gather here tonight to debate in a public way and in a civilized manner the differences we have. What I think this election is about something Paris mentioned. It's about change. 16 years of one government gives you an incredible opportunity to see what that government's philosophy or principles or beliefs mean. And I see it every day in downtown Nanaimo, where my constituency office is. I see it in increased numbers of homelessness. I see it in parents who come to me complaining and concerned about the fact their children can't get the assistance in the school system that they deserve and need in order to fulfill their dreams. I see it every day in statistics about the growing gap between the rich and the poor in our country, and in particular in this community. I see it every day in the work that I do and have done as your MLA. It's the reason I'm running again. It's because it is time for a change. That is the slogan, and it's not just a slogan. After 16 years, you've seen what the Liberals are up to. They have refused consistently to ban corporate and union donations from political parties. They've refused to put a cap on those monies. Big money corrupts politics. The only time each and every one of us in this room is equal is when we go into that booth on election day. Money corrupts that process. I'm asking all of you tonight to support a party that wants to get big money out of politics, that wants to restore some equity and social justice in this community, because I think we are all tired of seeing the effects of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. So now I will ask the first of 3 questions that will be posed to each of the candidates. Each candidate will have 45 seconds to provide a response. And as I make my way down the table, I will invite Bill to respond first to the question, how do you see the Mid-Island pursuing economic security? What is your vision for economic security on the Mid-Island?
Well, I think the vision for economic security is not just in the Mid-Island. It's everywhere in the province. Governments need to make sure that there's more money in the people's pockets so that they can provide for their own economic security and provide for their families. It was quite telling, I think, in the last, just before the last budget, and Christy Clark said, you know, we're going to run a surplus here, so we're going to give some more money back to the people, because she said, you know, people know how to spend their money a lot better than the government. That's a paraphrase. She said something pretty close to that, though. That's what we believe in. We believe that people need to have more money in their pockets, and that's going to give economic security. It's going to be better for business.
Thank you, Bill. I'll read the question again so that the candidates can have that opportunity to have it refreshed. How do you see the Mid-Island pursuing economic security? What is your vision of economic security on the Mid-Island? Yes, Kathleen. Thank you.
I think we need to really focus on the people and the resources that we have. We're a very rich area in this province. We shouldn't be seeing the disparity that we do. I'm very much about promoting local businesses, the talents and the ability of our local people, developing our local agriculture, and the ability within everybody to contribute to the maximum of their potential, and that includes things like stopping the raw lumber exports, developing infrastructure that supports our farm-based communities, and sorry, I don't know how much time I have with the orange, but
Thank you,
really
Kathleen.
supporting people to be part of this change that we're calling for.
And Leonard, again, the question.
Part of the plan is obviously an increase in the minimum wage. It's lost its purchasing power. The lowest paid workers in our community with more money in their pockets will promote local business. They'll spend their money locally. Part of it is also increasing social assistance rates by $100 per person. That, again, is money that will go right back into the local economy and support local businesses. Part of it is ensuring that our public institutions like Nanaimo Regional General Hospital purchase locally produced agricultural products wherever possible, so that we promote farming and agriculture and self-sustainability and food security in our own community. Part of it is about building the social housing and other housing that my party has talked about in its plan for 114,000 housing units over the next 10 years. All of that will promote local economic security.
Thank you, Leonard. Paris, do you need the question repeated?
I understand the question. Thank you. Nanaimo is such a beautiful place, and we have endless possibilities here. And when we need to find a way to make sure that our young people and our families can find work so they can stay in our community. And as a parent, that's what I want for my daughter, and I think everyone in this room wants that for their loved one. whatever that means for them in terms of employment. When we don't have opportunities, we lose our brightest people to other communities, and we're seeing that. Nanaimo should be a mecca for business, and we have attractive lifestyle, and we need to capitalize on these opportunities, because if we don't evolve, we're going to continue to just miss out on what we have here.
Thank you, Paris. Kathleen, I'll pose the next question to you first. What are the greatest social issues? How do you prioritize, and how would you resolve these issues?
Well, the biggest social issues were some of the ones I was talking about. For example, youth mental health, the housing crisis, poverty. BC is the only province in Canada that doesn't have a poverty reduction plan. I've spent time with the BC Poverty Reduction Coalition. I've been doing that for 5 years. I'm not doing it just because I'm sitting here before you today. I've made a commitment to do this kind of work for the people, with the people. Our platform is second to none as far as helping to support people with not just an advance in their minimum wage, but what we call a living wage that puts a lot of emphasis on putting it right where it should be and not just a blanket statement for everybody.
Thank you, Kathleen. Leonard, I'll repeat the question again.
Look, we know what the greatest social issues are in our community. It is around homelessness. It's about the fentanyl crisis. It's about children not getting adequate assistance in the school system. It's about affordable housing. It is about access to public health care. Those are all issues that are important, and those are all issues that we solve collectively through government. We do not expect you to solve individually on your own. And that's my point about why it is time for a change, because we do collectively what we cannot do individually. If you're disabled, if you're poor, you expect a community to assist you, and you deserve that community's assistance. And that's what I'm talking about when you talk about how you prioritize those issues. They're obvious in our community, and they need to be tackled all at once if we're going to build the kind of healthy community we want here.
Thank you, Leonard. Paris?
Thanks, Carrie. I think we can all agree that the most pressing social issue right now in our community and across this province is the fentanyl crisis. I've had the opportunity this week to talk to people on the ground that are working every day, saving lives and working with people to get them off addictions. And I asked them, what is the opportunity or the challenges they're facing? And what we have here is the need for continued services, from opening up more detox beds to ensuring that wait lists and treatment are reduced, also moving into recovery programs. So when they move out of addiction, they can get into recovery, and then secondary affordable housing and wraparound services for treatment and mental health counseling.
Thank you, Paris. Kathleen would like to make a rebuttal.
Yeah, the only problem is that's what we see in the governments is a reactionary approach to these things. The fentanyl crisis was avoidable. The whole mental health issue that we have out there is avoidable. 10 years ago, I was working with Kwantlen University doing campus mental health reduction and stigma reduction, campus mental health awareness and stigma reduction. 10 years ago, the Fraser Health Authority came out with the information that we were headed in this direction. They clearly stated, all the research showed that we were headed in this direction, and our government hasn't done anything about it. For 16 years, we've had the same MLA representing us in Nanaimo.
Thank you,
We haven't
Kathleen.
done anything about it.
Thank you. Bill, would you like me to repeat the original question? Bill, would you like me to repeat the original question?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just huge social issues out there. Too many to mention, really, but of course the fentanyl's the big one now. That's a scourge on all our communities. It's primarily a health issue that needs to be dealt with. I'm not sure that the government is able to deal with it, and a lot of the social issues. You know, Nanaimo has a great history of volunteerism, and you know, there's lots of charitable organizations out there, service clubs, sports organizations that help a lot of people in our community, and the volunteers are
Thank you,
very,
Bill.
very important.
Thank you. Leonard, you'll have the opportunity to respond first to the next question. The environment is important to us all. How will you deal with environmental issues?
I think one of the most important ones facing Nanaimo is obviously control of our public watershed, which is largely in private lands now. That will become an increasing issue over time, and it's something we should be dealing with now before it becomes problematic. We also have issues around urban sprawl that need to be dealt with, largely at the city level, but provincial governments have a role to play. We need to ensure appropriate green space in our community. As the population here grows, and it will continue to grow, this is a wonderful place to live. We're going to have to ensure that we have appropriate green space and promote biodiversity as well. In terms of prioritizing them, I expect to work with the community, but I can't resist by saying, put me in government, Kathleen. Trust me, you'll see some real change. The issues you talked about are the ones we've been talking about for 16 years in opposition. It is time for a change.
Thank you, Leonard. Paris?
Nanaimo is home to some amazing trails, clean water, fresh air. We live in the most amazing places. I don't need to tell you all that. But as a community and as a country, our greatest environmental issue right now is climate change. We need to find ways to reduce our emissions, whether that's expanding our hiking and biking trails to allow people other opportunities in terms of transportation, biking to work, biking to school, and supporting local agriculture. The whole buy local, grow local is really important. As a government, we were the first province to create a revenue-neutral carbon tax. And we're waiting for the rest of the country to catch up on that. But climate change is real, and we have a responsibility.
Thank you, Paris. Bill?
Yeah, we live in a great environment here. We've got clean water and clean air, and we've got sewers that work, and you know, even our dysfunctional municipal governments needs to be able to look after that. The cost of that is probably going to have to be addressed at the next municipal election, I guess. As far as, you know, some of the bigger picture issues, I don't believe that climate change is a problem. Certainly not for us here. It's not an issue, folks. It really isn't. So, you know, that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Bill. Kathleen?
I don't think I really need to tell anybody out there that the Green Party has the strongest platform and has been doing this work for a very long time. Our leader, Andrew Weaver, many years ago introduced the Climate Action Plan that was axed by the Liberal government. At that time, it was the most progressive and aggressive response in Canada. Personally, because my family has lived in this area for thousands of years, my First Nation side, I am very committed to preserving all parts of the environment of this island. I'm committed to saving the Salish Sea. I'm committed to saving the Georgia Strait. I'm committed to saving old growth forests. I'm committed to doing everything within my abilities to ensure that we preserve our beautiful island.
Thank you, Kathleen. That concludes the opening questions, and now I'll be moving to questions that have come from the floor this evening. Our first question is for all candidates. All candidates will have 45 seconds to respond to the question, and I will remind you that if you do want to exercise your option to form a rebuttal, you may do as Kathleen did, and I appreciate, Kathleen, that you put your rebuttal card up to the front so we can keep track. I was wondering how I was going to do that, so thank you. The question for all candidates, and I'll come back now and invite Paris to be the first to respond. The province of British Columbia has established criteria for municipal governance, which some maintain have handcuffed citizens to a broken system by increasing the terms of councillors to 4 years, neglecting any mechanism for external review of a municipal council, and failing to introduce any recall capability which might constrain a council prone to infighting. What, if anything, would you work for as a Nanaimo MLA to serve the municipal citizens of Nanaimo?
Well, I think we can all agree this is definitely a hot topic. I respect the autonomy of municipal government. And as an MLA, we need to be able to work with our municipal government in order to move projects forward. I do understand that the 4 years does prevent us from perhaps moving forward on opportunities. It's interesting because I see my role is not getting in the way of municipal government. I have brought forward issues, but we also need to be aware that they want assistance to move forward as a municipal council.
Thank you, Paris. Bill?
Yeah, I guess the citizens of Nanaimo are going to sort out the municipal council pretty quick here. And frankly, I think this province should just stay out of it. We'll look after them ourselves. Thanks.
Thank you. Kathleen?
Well, despite the jurisdictional issues, I think it's really important that people all work together. We should all practice collaborative leadership. Much of my master's degree was spent doing collaborative leadership and transformational leadership and leadership theory. So I could tell you a lot about how things should actually pan out and many ways to functionally work together. I think that provincial government, because we need to make some of these changes happen together with municipalities, that it is in our best interest to ensure that council is running to the best of their abilities. And I will do what I can to have discussions so that we can move forward in the most positive way possible.
Thank you, Kathleen.
There are only two levels of government recognized by the Constitution, the federal and provincial governments. Municipal government is strictly a creation of statute. It's entirely within provincial jurisdiction. There are two potential solutions, and I can just guess who asked this question. I'll talk to him afterwards. You either allow for local recall, and I must admit, until this present council got elected, I have not been a fan of recall, or, and not all members of council, I might add, would I wish to recall, or you change the act to allow for the minister to have greater powers than he says he has now, because I've asked him about it in dealing with Nanaimo's issues, give him greater and more specific powers, and I say him because it is a him, to be able to dismiss or deal with councils that are somewhat out of control.
Thank you, Leonard.
Thank you.
Several people in the audience this evening have asked questions about healthcare. The following question, Bill, you'll have the opportunity to respond first. I will pose to all candidates. Will government cover more medical, dental, and alternative medicine for all, and also in particular for persons with disabilities? Will government cover more medical, dental, and alternative medicine for the citizens of the province, and in particular for persons with disabilities?
I don't know. I guess basically, there's a lot of big picture healthcare issues there. We're in favor of more privatization of healthcare. So, people have the right to choose where they want to go and get their health care. You know, whether the government picks up the tab or not, I guess we'll have to look at the healthcare budget and see how much money we got there and decide from that.
Thank you. Kathleen?
This is something I invite you all to have a look at the BC Greens platform on. We have made a strong commitment to ensure that we are looking at the holistic needs of people. We are investing in allied healthcare perspectives to bring a holistic approach, which do include things like putting more money towards alternative healing practices, nurse practitioners, physiotherapists, and we see our role in really trying to support people to be able to take a holistic approach to their health care. Our platform on this is second to none. We have made a huge commitment to primary care and preventative health care to ensure that we're spending our
Kathleen.
healthcare dollars wisely.
Thank you.
I presume the question is directed at the concept that there are many people who pay for some things that are not covered by the public plan privately, and that simply isn't available to people who live on the pittance that represents what you're paid if you're a person with disability status in this province. I think a comprehensive healthcare system would cover a whole range of remedies that were recognized and proven to be efficacious and useful. But it is an expensive proposition, and I'm not going to make a commitment tonight about, yes, it's going to happen, because it is an expensive proposition. But in a properly functioning healthcare system, everyone should have access to that which would give them better health.
Thank you, Leonard. Paris? Oh, we've got a rebuttal from Kathleen. You wait. Okay. Thank you. Paris?
I believe that anyone, regardless of their socioeconomical conditions, deserve to have good health care. My understanding is that if people are on low income or on disabilities, that they have medical and dental benefits covered. I also think that there is an incredible opportunity for us to come together and solve this, right? I mean, we need to remember that it's not government's responsibility to put their fingers in. We need to be talking to people in our community to understand where the challenges are, where the gaps are, and how we can work together to create solutions.
Thank you, Paris. Another question with regard to healthcare. Oh, okay. Sorry, Kathleen. I forgot about your rebuttal.
Yeah, I find it quite unfortunate that we hear that we might not be able to afford these things. The whole idea behind preventative health care is that it is much more cost effective. And if you do the research, it's actually 3 times more cost effective if we take a holistic approach to health that recognizes the benefits of these other alternative healing practices. We see that they are cost effective. And so I suggest that everybody who is speaking on these do their homework and find out what the reality is.
Thank you, Kathleen. Another healthcare question for all candidates. Kathleen, I'll invite you to respond first. What does your party plan to do with MSP premiums?
Our party has committed to phase out MSP premiums. They're a very regressive tax. They're going to be applying them to much the same way we do our CCP, where it's equalized over the ability to pay. This ensures that we do it through the optimal, most equitable way and the most fair way for all, and it isn't that the lowest income earners are suffering and that the wealthy are able to get away with paying the same thing that people who can barely afford to survive on their social assistance.
Thank you.
We have committed in our platform to eliminating MSP premiums by the 4th year of a government mandate, 4-year term. I would suspect over the longer haul it would come out of general revenue and most likely increased taxation on higher income earners. It is a regressive tax. There is no reason someone who makes $40,000 a year should pay the same premium as someone who makes $400,000 or $4 million a year. Public health care is public health care is public health care. It's time to make it part of the system available to all. Premiums are a necessary expense and administrative burden on the public as well.
Paris?
Thanks, Carrie. Our party has been pretty clear on our MSP plan from the beginning. We haven't kind of flip-flopped on that commitment. We are committed to moving to eliminate the MSP premiums when we continue to have a strong economy. And right now, we are going to be reducing MSP premiums by 50%, which will at least put $900 in the pockets of families, because they know best how to spend that money. But, you know, we have to be fiscally responsible for this. We need to know that we can pay for this and afford this. It's about sustainability with any social program or any medical program that we implement.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, the Liberals should have dumped the MSP a long time ago. I don't know what's taking them so long, but there you go. We also need private health insurance as well too, and so that people can get plans that are going to be tailored to their own needs. And we need basically to open up the system so that people, if they need to get a procedure done, that they can pay for it themselves if they need to, and this will take a lot of pressure off the public health care system. So that's what I would be advocating for.
Thank you. The next question is specifically for Leonard Krog. Would the $400 credit for renters not be better directed to healthcare or education?
It's an interesting proposition, but I suppose you could make the same argument about the homeowners grant, giving it to people who already own houses. The concept behind the grant to renters is that homeowners receive a grant to reduce their taxes, and we're saying it doesn't seem unreasonable to give a grant to the hundreds of thousands of people in this province who rent to receive a similar amount of money to assist them with their rental payments. You can argue on a philosophical basis, and this is not in the platform, and God forgive me if the media reports it, but you know, the whole question of the homeowner grant is a BC, made in BC proposition. We're not going to be examining it, but it's a lovely topic for a long evening, and I'd be happy to have that discussion sometime.
The next question is for all candidates, still with healthcare. How will increasing taxes on doctors attract them to practice in BC? And I will begin with Paris.
Well, I think we can all agree that we need to be attracting more doctors. We have an aging population, and we need to be getting ahead of the curve so that we're able to ensure that our medical system is prepared for the aging population that we have. Right now, we're making a commitment to increase the number of doctors because we have a shortage. And so we need to be able to get ahead of that. In terms of the taxation piece, doctors no longer, want to be the business people. We need nurse practitioners that can able to provide that support for people that are in care.
Thank you. Bill?
Sorry, I didn't understand that question.
How will increasing taxes on doctors attract them to practice in BC?
Well, I doubt that increasing taxes will attract doctors or anyone else to BC, so I would think that's a bad idea. Yeah.
Thank you. Kathleen?
Well, doctors just pay the same taxes as the rest of us, so I'm not quite sure why the rest of us aren't attracted to BC. I think we are, and I think that's the point. We got a lot to offer. If you actually take the time to learn more about this situation, you will learn that we have more doctors per 100,000 people than we did 20 years ago. It's a complex situation, and it requires a complex answer. The Green Party, as I was saying earlier, is committed to many alternative ways of dealing with this, including not getting people as sick as they are. our chronic diseases are largely preventable. There's more and more research coming out how everything from cardiovascular disease, arthritis,
Thank you, Kathleen.
are preventable.
I think if I was a doctor, I might be insulted by the proposition that I'd only be in it for the money. The fact is, people choose the healing profession, I think, for the best of motivations, and I'd like to believe that most doctors do so. The fact that they're remunerated well reflects the quality of the service and the importance of the service they deliver to the public. In terms of increasing taxation, if there's a tax on higher income earners, do we honestly believe that doctors are going to leave the province over some modest increase in taxation when you live in this wonderful province, in a free and stable democracy where you're safe in your streets? I don't think so. The reality is they want to live in an equitable and fair and just society just like the rest of us, and that's why we're all here.
Thank you. This is our last question pertaining to health care as far as, unless Kim has a mitt full in his hand, but I think this is the last one for health care. And I apologize to the person who wrote it because I think there's a typo in the wage, so I'm going to be adjusting it just ever so slightly. For all candidates, Bill, you'll be the first to respond. You've all mentioned the fentanyl crisis, yet our frontline paramedics are still not considered essential services, and many are being paid a nominal wage to serve their communities. What do you plan to do to change this? $2 an hour? Oh, on standby. Okay, on call? Okay, thank you. $2 an hour.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. You want me to answer first, right?
Do you want to answer?
Well, I'm not really sure.
I'll repeat it. You've all mentioned the fentanyl crisis, yet our frontline paramedics are still not considered essential services, and many, the majority, are being paid $2 an hour to serve their communities. What do you plan to do to change this?
Yeah, I don't know what we do to change that. I mean, again, that fentanyl thing has taken a lot of, obviously, a lot of time for the frontline workers, like the ambulance workers, and that's a tough question. I don't know how we do that, except it's a major health crisis out there, and the ambulance workers obviously need to be properly remunerated for their time. So, that's it.
Thank you. Kathleen?
Yes, firstly, it's probably a good opportunity to thank the great work that our emergency response people do. Having been an operating room nurse for 18 years, I worked on call all those weekends and in the evenings for emergency surgery, so I know what it's like. I got paid $1 an hour, though, to be on call. So I know it is a bit disrespectful, and I think people should be remunerated in an equitable way that recognizes their expertise. So it's something that would really have to be looked at, in particular to what they're offering us in regards to specifically to making it required service. It's something that I think is really important to have a look at.
Thank you.
Not long after the BC Liberals were elected, they gutted the Hospital Employees Union contract. They showed their first act of disrespect for people who work in the healthcare system, the important services they deliver. The fact that we have paramedics still stuck on $2 an hour standby time, literally hour after hour, day after day, with no guarantee of employment, says a great deal about their attitude about public service and about our health system. The fact that they continuously brag about having the lowest taxes in Canada and we have the greatest inequity and wealth amongst the provinces, I would suggest, is demonstrable of a difference in philosophy. If you expect to treat paramedics properly, you have to pay them properly. A decent government would.
Thank you. Paris?
Thanks, Carrie. Our frontline workers are out there every day dealing with this fentanyl crisis, and it's affecting every single one of us as community members. I know some frontline workers are dealing with 5-6 overdoses in one day. They're stressed out. Their hours are astronomical, and we need to look at this. And I'm definitely going to be a champion for this because I believe that people need to have the resources and supports they need in place. In addition to that, we should be looking at counseling support for our frontline workers.
Thank you. I'm going to switch gears a little bit now, and Kathleen, you will be the first to respond to the question, with regard to BC ferries, why are ferry fares so excessive, and when will costs apply equally to everyone?
This is a bit of a complex situation, but I think we need to do a whole review of the BC ferries, and that's what the Green Party has committed to, is having a look at what they're doing as a corporate entity, as well as bringing it BC ferries back under corporate control. The CEO of BC ferries, as you may know, makes about $400,000, $500,000 a year. So there's a lot of wasted money. By looking at what the average person pays, there's a much more equitable way to do it, where we cost out by spreading those costs across the province. We all help pay for infrastructure in the Lower Mainland, and there's no reason why
Thank
the
you.
government can't cover some of these expenses.
A report done a couple of years ago for the UBCM showed that increased ferry fares on the coast cost the British Columbia economy, I think it was $2.4 or $2.8 billion in lost economic activity. So whatever the government gained by upping your fares, they lost in economic activity and the taxation that would have resulted from that. We've promised immediate freeze on ferries to bring it back under government control. And then to look at how we can reduce rates. We commit also to reducing rates on the small routes by 15% as well. That's important. The ferries are our lifeline. They're our highways. We in the coast don't deserve to be treated this way. I look at those lovely roads in the interior. I think I'd like to have the same quality of service down here in Nanaimo.
Thank you.
We need to keep our ferry system affordable and sustainable. The last thing we want is a freeze on ferry fares, because we'll be going kind of right back to the 1990s and the debacle of the fast ferry and high taxes and debt. What we're doing is looking at the creation of a loyalty program, which will allow us to provide opportunities for those frequent ferry users to take a little bit off their taxes at the end of the year. Right now, BC Ferries does not have the ability to track or collect data, and so we need to keep it affordable and a sustainable system.
Thank you.
BC ferries are obviously a critical part of our transportation infrastructure, particularly for us that live on Vancouver Island, and all of our goods, that services, and everything that are transmitted over the ferry system is very important. However, it is already under government control. I mean, it's a private corporation, but 100% of the shares are owned by the province. So, is it under government control or not under government control? I think the ferries need to be looked at seriously. I mean, let's face it; it's an expensive service to run. There's a lot of costs there. How much should the taxpayers subsidize it?
Thank you. This question, Leonard, I'll invite you to respond first, and it is for all candidates. Residential developments across the island are subjected to inefficient, months-long planning and approval processes and rising fees that are all passed on to home buyers. What will your government do to address this and encourage municipalities to use best practices for approvals?
It is quite strictly within municipal control, so let's be frank about that. But in terms of how permits are issued and how development is granted, I think most of the business people, the developers I know, if they're going to hear a no, they want to hear the no quickly. If they're going to get a yes, they want to hear the yes quickly and get on with it, because time is money, and Lord knows we have a housing crisis in this province that is keeping people from having access to the market to purchase housing. So, in as much as the province can encourage, I would do so, But I want to be fair and honest here. It is a municipal responsibility, but we have to be forthright about the increasing costs that are imposed on the construction of each new dwelling.
Thank you. Paris?
I look around in Nanaimo and there's so much construction going on, and every time I see it, I think of the jobs that are being created and the housing opportunities for people in our community. We need to decrease the barriers for people to be able to build and for our economy to grow and for our construction workers and our developers to get the job done. So it's about coming together and looking at that collectively, responsibly, and collaboratively.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, there's no question that that the rules and regulations and the costs, the development cost charges, the fees, the wait times, all are contributing to higher prices for real estate. And it's something that we probably should address at the municipal level the next election. I think that's an important issue, and a lot of those things need to be streamlined, and the costs need to be reduced.
Thank you. Kathleen?
As Leonard says, this does fall under a municipal jurisdiction, but provincially and municipally, ineffectiveness is really not in anybody's best interest. So anything that we could do to help make the process go more efficiently, especially when it comes down to things like affordable housing, which we do need to, as a province, make a keen investment in. The BC Greens have a strong commitment to make affordable housing happen. Anybody who takes the time to learn about the issue understands that the housing first premise, that's what people need in order to get a ground up in our province. And as far as committing to affordable housing and this issue, BC Greens are definitely going to step up to the plate.
Again, for all candidates, starting with Paris, it's a known fact that the arts contribute significantly to tourism, our economy, our learning ability, our well-being, and our quality of life. What plans do you have in your platform to show support for the arts and artists, both in schools and in communities? And how is this an improvement from the last 4 years of government funding?
I'm passionate about the arts. I mean, Nanaimo's pretty fantastic community. I mean, we have incredible art and culture here, and we need to continue to support the efforts of those groups. I also believe that, my approach to public policy is very much a bottom-up, and my commitment is to be working with these groups to identify the funding opportunities they need, where can we collaborate a little bit more. There is arts and culture commitment on our platform, and they're an important part of our economic capacity, especially here in Nanaimo. Arts is a significant economic driver. We need to just continue the work that they do.
Thank you. Bill?
We do have a vibrant arts community in Nanaimo. I guess the question is, again, how much government subsidies do we put into it? I think arts are very important. I think if people have more money in their pockets, if they pay less taxes, that they will support the arts, they will support these nonprofit organizations, and the arts will thrive.
Thank you. Kathleen?
I definitely agree with what the other candidates have said about the importance of arts. It is hard to believe that our governments actually believe in that when you see what's happened in our school systems and how they've decimated the arts programs, music programs. Schools can't get basic equipment that they need to do this work, to even develop artistic abilities in people. People who are involved in teaching are well aware that our brains are stimulated, they form better connections, it makes for better growth and development in our students, and we need to start at early ages to really develop and promote these skills. Arts support community development, they support cohesiveness, they support working together.
you.
There's many, many reasons to get behind this.
I pride myself in being a fair student of history, and I've not read of the collapse of any civilization because it had too much arts and culture. It is firstly important to the community, and music is important to the soul, and creativity is important to community. It's also, as has been pointed out in the premise of the question, it is a significant economic driver. It costs precious little for what government pays now. Increasing that support would have a dramatic impact on increasing government revenue. I would remind you that President Roosevelt in the 30s figured that out, and there were a whole pile of things in the arts and culture community that were promoted by President Roosevelt that returned significant economic benefits to the society as a whole in the midst of the Great Depression.
Thank you. This question is specifically for Paris and Leonard, and Leonard, I'll invite you to respond first. Affordable childcare is hard to come by, especially for parents who are balancing work and attending post-secondary. What is your party going to do to help university students and other parents who are unable to afford to raise a family?
We have proposed a $10 childcare program, essentially modeled on that in the province of Quebec. In Quebec, the province, I believe, gets about a 7-to-1 return on the investment in that through increased productivity, increased participation in the workforce, increased revenue to government because people are actually out working and paying taxes, let alone the health benefits. The quality of that childcare is high. It's important. It is something that in modern economies and all Western economies, they have affordable childcare in place. It's important to have that. I think it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for the public, and it's the right thing to do for parents who want to participate in the workforce.
Thank you. Okay, Paris.
Yes, thank you. Childcare is important. I'm a mom. You know, it's important. And we have a targeted approach to addressing childcare. But let's just be clear on something. This is about a space issue. And this is about making sure we have enough childcare workers to meet the demands. We're committed to open 5,000 new childcare spaces. With our federal support, that's going to be 13,000 spaces. We've also recognized that we need to diversify the options for parents. So looking at 3 new streams of licensed childcare. So that's Indigenous, employer-based, and child development. Let's be clear about the Quebec model does not work. And how are we going to pay for this? And it's going to be high taxes, and it's only going to allow people to jump the line that can pay.
Thank you. Leonard, one question specifically for you. You were an MLA the last time the NDP were in government, and you're ahead in the polls. What will be different the next time if you form the government?
Well, John Diefenbaker put it best, polls are for dogs. The only poll that counts is the one on election day, and I intend to continue campaigning as hard as I possibly can. My hope is obviously that my party becomes the government of this province, because after 16 years, it's important to make those changes. When Paris criticizes the concept of Quebec daycare, I would remind her that that is holding back the economy in Vancouver in significant ways. That is a chronic complaint from young professionals who would love to work in high-tech industry, who'd love to work in those jobs that are in demand right now, but they can't afford childcare in order to do so.
Thank you. I see a rebuttal card. Thank you.
Yeah. I prefer to focus on the issues that are affecting my community, which is Nanaimo. And it is about spaces and open up opportunities for families to get childcare spaces. This is not a cost issue. If we jump the line, if we do $10 day daycare, it's going to provide opportunities for the wealthy to jump the line, and that those families that are in need, that need the spaces, will not have the opportunity.
Thank you. Oh, another rebuttal. Thank you.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we weren't actually invited to speak on this, but I do think it's important to be able to hear that the Greens have taken the strongest standpoint on this. If you have a look at our platforms, We've committed to providing free daycare for working parents for children under 3, as well as something that none of the other parties are doing. We're offering up to $500 for families who have a stay-at-home parent, so the parents are able to actually stay home and give the care to the child themselves. What a concept. Just on the way here, my daughter said to me that, "Oh, Mom, I wish I could have spent more time with you at home instead of you going to work." As a single parent putting myself through school and paying a mortgage, it was an unfortunate reality.
Thank you. A question for all candidates, and I will invite Paris to respond first. Do the candidates feel and believe Christy Clark's BC Liberal government have betrayed the rights and title of First Nations in BC, considering the construction of the Site C Dam, Mount Polly disaster, proposed pipelines, and super oil tankers on BC's coast?
There's lots in that question. I cannot speak for Christy Clark. I can only speak as the candidate, so I will do just that. I believe in truth and reconciliation of our First Nations people. We need to have them at the table when we're making thoughtful and considerate decisions about things. I know that Site C and LNG and Kinder Morgan are very hot topics right now, and I understand that First Nations need to be part of that conversation, which they have been.
Thank you. Bill?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think these are all issues that face all of us, including Indigenous people. And I see no reason why that we should not have a discussion between all of us regarding these things. And I think it's only fair. I mean, I'm fully in favor of the Indigenous people of the province getting their self-determination. So let's move on.
Thank you.
Being of First Nations descent myself, I must confess that I find listening to either of our provincial parties tell me that they are actually embracing truth and reconciliation rather hypocritical. This has been going on for 150 years. I've been doing truth and reconciliation work on the ground with students, with elders, helping to bring a mutual understanding, a shared space of understanding and moving forward in the best way possible. Indigenous peoples' philosophy relies on things like respect and reciprocity. These are all things that have not been part of either government's platform in 150 years.
Thank you.
It's not just the rights of First Nations that have been disrespected by this government. It was the legal rights of British Columbians to expect that Site C should have gone to the BC Utilities Commission, which is what the law provides, except that this government chose to exempt it from that process so they could proceed willy-nilly to sink $1 billion in a hole before they'd shown any respect whatsoever for the First Nations of this province. And you should all be angry about this because that law was put in place to ensure that governments looked at at all of the values that are important around that kind of project in order to protect the public interest, and this government chose to ignore it, just as it chose to ignore the rights of First Nations.
Thank you. I have just 2 more questions for the panel before we move to our closing question. The first of the final 2 from the floor is on education, and it comes from a VIU student who writes that as a post-secondary student, I have sadly racked up thousands in student loan debt. What are you and your parties doing to ensure low costs and livable wages while studying and to ensure student success? Bill?
Sorry, I didn't get that question.
A VIU student sadly racked up thousands in student loan debt. What are you and your parties doing to ensure low costs and livable wages while studying and to ensure student success?
I'm sorry, what?
What are you and your party planning to do to ensure low costs for post-secondary students and livable wages while they are studying?
We have no plans for that.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen?
Yeah, the Greens have committed to helping students with grants and relief of up to $2,000 a year for a total of 5 years, making it a total of $10,000 for our students to be able to afford to go to school. We have a fully costed lifelong learning plan that addresses everything from supporting students in professional development, as well as taking a collaborative approach with industry and ensuring that there's quality jobs for students when they graduate. This is something that we can all pull together and tackle. Our students shouldn't be graduating and working for minimum wage with bachelor degrees, master's degrees. Thank you.
Thank you.
The first thing is to eliminate interest on student loans. The second thing is to provide a completion grant of $1,000 for anyone who starts and completes an academic or technical program post-secondary. That gives them a goal to work towards and a reward for completing the program. We'd also eliminate tuition fees that this government introduced on adult basic education. If you'd been sticking to your guns in high school, you wouldn't have had to pay, but if you're an adult, you have to pay to get adult basic education. It's regressive, it is silly, it goes against all common sense. And increasing the minimum wage is going to benefit a number of students, enable them to pay for their own way instead of accumulating the highest level of student debt in the country. We're $35,000 a student, the Canadian average is $27,000.
Thank you. Paris?
Thank you, Carrie. We've capped tuition increases at 2%. Our undergrads have the 4th lowest tuition in the country in BC. We've introduced the open textbook. So we're recognizing that textbooks are really expensive for students. So providing opportunity for books to be online. Considerable savings there. There's also significant grants and scholarships available at Vancouver Island University. There's often money left on the table. But let's talk about this minimum wage piece. Our government is about ensuring that our citizens get training so they can get a really good paying job. And that's our focus, and education does just that. People being on minimum wage, that's not gonna solve the challenges of economics. We want people to get training they need for the days and the jobs of tomorrow.
Thank you. And our final question from the floor, Kathleen, I will invite you to respond first. How would a government formed by your party respond to the softwood lumber dispute with the USA?
Well, this is something we really need to take a strong stance on. Forestry has been a part of our BC economy ever since the province was formed, essentially. I, for one, and I know Andrew Weaver as well, are willing to stand up to the U.S. This is something we need to take a strong stance on and not buckle down to bullies like Trump. We have a very sustainable forestry. I think it's really important to also address that we should not be doing any more raw law exports that allow us to send our forestry jobs and lumber jobs overseas. This is just not economically responsible.
Thank you.
The first thing the new premier should do is go down to Washington themselves and make it very clear how angry British Columbians are and remind their house builders and home builders that they need us just as much as we need them. And remind them that we were supposed to be working under a free trade agreement that's supposed to benefit both nations, and they have continuously and constantly attacked the Canadian lumber industry, and particularly this province. So it's a time to show some fortitude. And it's also time to recognize, that we have to stand up to the federal government, let them know they're not going to sell us out in the West because of lumber producers back east.
Thank you. Paris?
Thank you so much. This is a very sensitive topic, and it's in all of our minds right now. Forestry is a very important sector in Nanaimo, in this province. It fed my family, and my dad worked in it for years. And our premier right now is standing up for BC forest workers and up to Trump. So under the jobs plan, just so we're clear on the jobs piece, that we've gained 9,825 jobs, which is an increase of 17% for forestry workers. It's important to remember that every softwood lumber dispute that we've been at the table with U.S. allegations, we have proven them false. We've won in the past, and we will win again because we're standing up for BC forest workers because it's a growing economy and we need to support those families.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, this has been happening on and off for years with successive governments, and we certainly need to stand up against that. And, you know, I don't know if Justin's got the guts, but we should definitely tell him he's got to do it. So get to it, Justin.
Thank you. So our final wrap-up question, and I will go in the reverse order to the introductions, and I'll start with you, Leonard. The final question, and each candidate, I'll remind the audience, will have 2 minutes to provide their closing response. What do you see as our community's most significant issues overall? What do you identify as your greatest priority if elected?
It is around, as I began this evening, it is around poverty, it is around housing, it is around homelessness, and it is around jobs. The fact is, Nanaimo has a great core of poverty. 16 years have not solved that. It's expensive socially, it's expensive for government, it's unhealthy for communities. So it has to be the greatest priority. And some of the things I've talked about tonight have to be part of that solution. But it's also about ensuring that we stop exporting all the raw logs we do so that we can ensure that those mills that continue to exist actually have access to fiber so that we can provide decent jobs in our community that will keep families fed and clothed and housed. Those are all priorities, I think. One thing that I don't have control over, and I wish I did, though, I'd sure like to see a foot passenger ferry up and running if we get the Port Authority and the City of Nanaimo to get together and do it quickly. Because, am I going to get 2 minutes for this? Ooh, I love it. This is great. I thought it was only 45. We've been asking for it for years. We have a proponent that's ready to go, and it's time this community got on board. We have tremendous opportunities here, but in terms of those priorities, some of the things I've talked about around housing and construction programs, around childcare, $10 a day childcare, all of those things will assist us in meeting those priorities. Poverty leads to increased crime. Poverty leads to increased healthcare problems. Poverty leads to social breakdown, breakdowns of families and relationships. Much of the social problems we try and ameliorate relate back to poverty. So unless we learn to address that and fix those issues, we're not going to make the progress. We'll continue to try and stumble along and pretend that after 16 years, I ask you this question, are you really better off today than you were 16 years ago? Are your family, are your children or your grandchildren better off than they were 16 years ago? Some of you, yes. But a lot of you, no. And that's why I'm asking you to vote for change this time.
Thank you.
Yes, poverty is definitely a concern, and I would add to that affordable housing, sustainable jobs. We have a strong proposal to bring forth new economies and take Nanaimo and the rest of BC to where we need to be going in sustainable, clean energies. We can lead in this area. We have the expertise, we have the abilities. All we need is some foresight and the political will to bring it forward. There's many different opportunities for our young people if we embrace them instead of investing in the economies of yesterday. Fossil fuels are not where it's at. Europe has set some really amazing examples of where we can go with this, which includes Germany has 45% of their energy relies on solar power. We can be investing in magnetic trains. We can be investing in wave energy. There's all kinds of exciting things we can do if we embrace this and be leaders rather than followers. I believe the people of British Columbia and Nanaimo have the abilities and the strength to be part of that new economy. I want to be your voice in Victoria to bring forth the voice of Nanaimo. I have the proven ability to be doing this. I've been doing this work for 20 years. I just haven't been paid for it or recognized for doing it as your MLA. And if I'm going to do it for nothing, then I'm damn well going to do it even better if I'm your MLA.
Thank you. Bill?
Is this our final?
Yes.
Okay. The BC government currently spends $50 billion a year, and we have a debt of $67 billion. That's increasing. We need to have some tax relief here. You know, the politicians talk all the time about sustainability. Well, these taxes, big government, this debt, it's just not sustainable. The taxpayers can't sustain this. It's not a chance. It's all gonna come crashing down here. We need tax relief immediately. You know, the government doesn't create jobs. Individuals create jobs. Businesses create jobs, particularly small business. Small business is the biggest driver of job creation in our economy. We need to support that. And by reducing taxes on people and businesses, that's going to help us immensely. We want competition and choice across all sectors, and more choice and lower costs for consumers. You know, at one point in time, well, it's actually 1917, exactly 100 years ago, the federal government brought in income taxes, and it was a temporary measure to support the war effort. And, you know, 100 years later, we've got this massive tax bill that we have to pay all the time. And it's just unfair, and it can't continue.
Thank you. Paris?
You know, my greatest priority and my greatest responsibility as your MLA is to listen and to be a champion for Nanaimo, to move projects forward, and to represent this community and have somebody fight for you. I'll be a champion for issues that matter to you. I believe it's communities know best what they need. When we're talking about affordable housing, we know that's an issue. When we're talking about the fentanyl crisis, we can all agree that's a critical issue for our community. We're looking at ensuring that our social programs, that everyone has the ability to live a quality of life. I think we can agree with that. Child poverty, child reduction in poverty, absolutely critical. We need to bring together everyone in the community to address this issue. We also need to be looking at modernizing our community. We need a modern Nanaimo, right? Technology is the fastest growing sector in the province. We have a world-class university creating incredible educational opportunity for our children and our grandchildren. How can we power them up so they continue to grow this economy here in Nanaimo? So on May 9th, we have a choice to make, don't we, as individuals and constituencies? We can choose a progressive, liberal candidate that is energetic, progressive, forward-thinking, or we can stick with the status quo, because that's what we've always done. If we continue to look back on things that we've always done, we are never going to be able to seize the opportunities that are sitting in front of us as a community. Nanaimo is home to amazing creativity and small business and bright people. For too long, we've been represented by people that think their job is to say no. I think it's better to build and create and innovate and create opportunities, regardless of your social economical conditions. I'm ready to give Nanaimo a voice. I am the right candidate at the right time in the right community. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim, do you have any closing comments that you would like to make? Kim, do you have any closing comments? Then on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce Board, I would like to show appreciation for the Chamber CEO, Kim Smythe, for organizing tonight's event for us. I would like to thank all of you for coming and taking interest in our civic duties to elect a government that will serve our interests in Nanaimo. And finally, I do want to extend a warm thank you to the candidates who have come to share their platforms and their thoughts on the next 4 years in Nanaimo, and we look forward to May 9th. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.